Hiya gobshites, my name is Stovetop and welcome back to the 4th episode of the Ultimate Movie Rank, where I attempt to rank as many movies as I can before death gets my goat. Today we'll be finishing our look at the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy with Spider-Man: The Dragon's Challenge. Spider-Man: The Dragon's Challenge originally aired as the finale episodes of the television series on July 6, 1979 as the two-parter, The Chinese Web. Similarly to the previous film, Spider-Man Strikes Back, it was eventually re-edited as a feature film for European audiences on February 2, 1981, a whole 2 years after the series' cancellation. Despite this, for reasons unknown to me, the official theatrical release is May 9, 1991. I don't understand it myself, but this is the date the rest of the internet seems to agree on, and who am I to argue? In 1981, the film was released on VHS, but the film has not, and unfortunately probably will not, see a DVD release. It is commonly known by many film fanatics that the third film in a trilogy is usually the worst. Was the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy an early adopter of this trend? Well, let's find out and take a look at 1981's Spider-Man: The Dragon's Challenge. The movie begins in Hong Kong as we see a man named Min Lo Chan being followed by an even shadier man, both figuratively and literally, they'll never suspect a thing, before boarding a plane. We then see a couple of people as they appear to be fishing in an Easter basket? It seems like somebody's taking Bunny Day fishing a little bit too seriously. Shades then takes a trolley up a mountain to meet with a rich white man stereotype named Mr. Zyder, who is of course having a portrait painted of him, having expensive jewelry displayed to him, and has two beautiful young women waiting on the sidelines. I never understood why rich people in movies spend their money this way. If I had that kind of money, I would use it on something practical. I would build a life-size model of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Megazord, with each limb dedicated to one of my many hobbies. Come on, I know how to spend my money, kidneys. Shades then passes on a message via a game of telephone to Mr. Zyder that Min Lo Chan has left for New York to contact a witness that can prove his innocence of recent charges. Zyder decides to have Min Lo killed while he's in New York so his company confirm a $1 billion contract for a new steel mill. In New York, Min Lo meets up with JJJ and they reminisce about going to college together. In a bit of exposition, JJJ mentions that Min Lo is the Minister of Industrial Development for China. Rita takes Min Lo's niece, Emily, for a tour of the Daily Bugle so Min Lo and Jonah can talk in private. Min Lo reveals to Jonah that in 1946 he was working for the Chinese army. One day, a school teacher came up to him and told him that the US military would like to meet with him. 3 Marines met with Min Lo and offered him $10,000 for intel on the size of the Chinese army, but Min Lo refused. Min then asked Jonah for help finding the 3 ex-Marines to clear his name of stealing military info alongside robbing and killing the school teacher. Jonah agrees and brings on Peter Parker to locate the 3 men. Peter meets up with a Marine officer with whom he recently interviewed to get the name and location of the 3 ex-Marines. The officer agrees to get Peter the information, off the record, over the telephone the next day. Min and Emily then exit the Bugle and are being followed by 3 men assigned to assassinate Min Lo. One of the goons follow Min and Peter as they gather the records on their 3 ex-Marines. Peter's spider sense goes off, warning him of the incoming attacker, so he leaves to get into costume, pushing the filing cabinets on the goons and chasing him into the processing room where we're introduced to the scariest paper cutter I have ever seen! If this was a horror movie, you know somebody's head would be going through that thing. Spider-Man makes chase, stalking above the goon before jumping down and kicking the gun out of his hand. The goon gets the upper hand for a moment, almost putting Spidey-Man's head through some machinery before Spidey escapes and trips the goon over with a stack of newspapers. Some of the workers notice Spider-Man standing over the goon and call the police, causing Spidey to run off. The police arrest the goon and JJJ arrives to help with questioning. Jonah tells Rita and Peter to keep the gunman out of the papers. Min Lo decides to stay home for his own safety and asks Peter to bring any information he finds to his niece's house. Meanwhile, the 2 remaining goons call back to Hong Kong to tell Mr. Zyder about the failed attempt and that they will try again tomorrow. Mr. Zyder tells them to only call him once the job is done, and the 2 remaining goons formulate a plan to recruit a new member into their trio. Peter meets up with a woman named Julie, who asks Peter what's been going on about the shooting they took out of the papers. Peter resists at first, but eventually tells her that the man that was arrested is probably an assassin assigned to take out Min Lo Chan. At home, Emily warns Min Lo that he may be putting too much trust into Jonah.
One can only trust whom one trusts.
Now, Uncle, you're getting very Chinese on me.
Very well, my American niece.
You know what? Not even gonna touch that one. Peter swings by the apartment, not literally this time, to drop off the information he found on the 3 ex-Marines. Peter's spider sense goes off again, warning him of the 3 assassins entering the apartment. They hold the group at gunpoint, but Peter runs into the other room and escapes.
That yo-yo jumped out the window.
Hey yo, boss, that crazy yo-yo just jumped out that window and he deployed some kind of rope device, and when he hit the bottom of the rope, he bounced right back up to the window. It's the craziest dang thing I ever seen. This went on for several minutes before he just scuttled away. What a freaking weirdo, am I right? Peter suits up and returns to take out the gaggle of goons and tells Emily to call the police. 2 of the goons escape with the file, but 1 is handed over to the police. Minlo is rolled out of the building, having fallen victim to a heart attack that Emily blames Peter for because he ran away. Peter meets back up with Julie and they continue their research on the ex-Marines. Julie tries to comfort Peter about what happened back at the apartment, but Peter gives her the cold shoulder and Julie leaves so Peter can enter some inner monologue.
Emily, it's only because I have to prevent anyone from knowing that I'm Spider-Man that I ran away.
You're a coward. You left us to be killed.
If only I could tell you.
I never want to see you again.
I didn't know you had a bad heart, Mr. Min. If I had known, I wouldn't have run away. I swear I wouldn't have run away.
Whew! Glad that was there. I was having trouble figuring out how Peter felt in that moment. Thanks, movie. Jonah goes back to the hospital to check in on Minlo, and Emily tells him that it's too early to tell if he'll make a full recovery. Back at the university, Peter's spider sense goes off as one of the goons hides behind a hedge with a pistol to take Peter out of the equation. Nice hiding spot, my dude. Peter ignores the warning and approaches his old professor, revealing that he knows his real name is Jonathan Fleming and that he met with Minlo Chan, causing the professor to storm off in anger. Peter then drives off to a nearby parking garage and he suits up and awaits for his attacker, where he distracts the goon and webs him to a car. Afraid of another felony, the goon tells Spidey that his partners are going to take out Minlo at the hospital tomorrow night, and gathers some microfilm from the Brooklyn Subway Museum that'll tell his boss where to find the Marines.
Okay. I'll tell the police you were very cooperative.
Peter, Julie, and Jonah meet up with Emily at the hospital to have Minlo moved to a private hospital after his surgery in the morning and fake his death in the paper. Emily reluctantly agrees, and Minlo forces Emily and Peter to promise to trust each other and find the Marines to bring them to China and clear his name. In the morning, Peter follows 2 of the goons as they enter the Subway Museum. Peter suits up and plays a game of hide-and-seek with one of the goons, peekaboo, before pulling an "oh, let me squeeze past you there," and running off with a microfilm. Spider-Man tries to escape down a subway tunnel, but gets shot in the back by the world's quietest gun.
Got him.
Seriously, I've had cat guns louder than that. Hey, welcome to the studio. Today we're going to be doing the sound design for the newest Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man the Dragon's Challenge. Are you guys excited? Oh, coolio! It's my first day on the job and I really want to make a good impression. So what do you got for me? Well, we have a scene where Spider-Man is running down a subway tunnel and he gets shot in the back. So we need a gunshot noise for the scene. Say no more, my man. Could you do me a favor and hold up a finger gun? It'd help me get in the mood. Sure. Awesome. Okay, stay right there. Oh no! Don't shoot! How was that? Was that good? I don't know. It sounded pretty good to me. It's pretty loud. You know, don't you agree? Sure, whatever. This is gonna be lost media in 40 years anyway. Who gives a crap? Like any proper villain must do, they leave the train to finish the job rather than doing it themselves, allowing Spidey to scoot past an incoming train and escape. Peter walks out of an alleyway, his arm hurting from the gunshot wound in his back, but he quickly feels better after stopping for a hot dog. Rita and Julie meet up with him to debrief about what they found on the ex-Marines. Rita reveals that one of the Marines is dead, and Julie reveals that the other is in intensive care and almost died on the operating table, leaving Peter's old professor as their only hope. Peter confronts his professor to a less than warm reception, but when Peter tells him that he knows that he stole the $10,000 and killed the school teacher, the professor divulges that he didn't do it.
That's right, Mr. Parker. My buddy, Lou Stepple, stole the money and shot the teacher. Oh, he planted some of the money in my belongings. Just enough so they made a case against me. Like you, no one else believed me.
However, when Semple died, he sent a letter to the professor confessing that he killed the schoolteacher, proving the professor's innocence. Peter convinces the professor to come forward with the evidence. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, Mr. Zyder hears that Emily and Peter are coming to China with the ex-Marine to clear Minlo's name. Zyder immediately sees through the fake death in the newspaper and directs his goons to kill Peter, Emily, and the Marine as they arrive in Hong Kong. When the group arrives in Hong Kong, a man gives Emily a note telling them to meet Minlo's cousin at a nearby temple, but Peter is, understandably, suspicious. We get a ringing of the gong as the temple doors open and a group of people are chanting and singing. Look, even they're confused. They move on and are greeted by a man who claims to be Minlo's cousin. He confirms this by showing them a picture of Emily.
Yup, checks out. Definitely checks out. We should definitely trust this man and give this no further thought whatsoever.
They are told that they have to wait 2 days before they can be taken across the border to China and are introduced to 2 men that'll, quote, keep them company while they wait.
Completely normal situation. We shouldn't think twice about this. Let's just go on about our days with these 2 people that we've never met before following us around while we have a target on our heads. What's the worst that could happen?
3 mystery men follow the now group of 5 as they leave for their take a ferry.
I feel so strange being here.
They eventually make their way to their hotel and rise up early the next morning to go sightseeing. They go to the park and watch as people shadowbox.
I wish I knew how to shadow box.
I mean, you could. It doesn't seem that hard. You just kind of...
Jesus! Okay, go, wait, calm down, guy. Calm down. We're all friends here. No need to go kicking things.
The group then walk to a marketplace and are followed by a man and a woman to have Professor Marine's nails did. They then stop and witness a group of people in prayer.
While saying a prayer, they shake the sticks until one falls out. Now, each stick has a number. And the number on the stick helps provide an answer to their prayer. But that has to be interpreted by the soothsayer.
Is this a Buddhist temple or Taoist?
No, Taoist. But the line between 2 of them are often unclear.
Well, let's have a look around some more, and then how about some lunch?
All right. And then the Aberdeen Street Market.
Peter and Professor Marine then take a second to talk about some of the Chinese deities.
Taoism is a beautiful religion. Their gods live among the stars.
Their supreme deity is called the Jade Emperor, or Yak Wong. Professor Fleming forgets I did take one of his classes. Now, there are 3 special star gods, the gods of happiness, prosperity, and long life.
You do have a good memory.
Well, you made the course live for me. It would be hard to forget.
Before the group goes to the street market where Peter places a tracker on the professor. One of the street vendors gives a signal and a small army of men begin attacking Professor Marine, knocking him out and sneaking him onto a boat in the commotion. Peter tells Emily to return to the hotel as he gets in costume and returns just in time to see the boat leaving the dock. Spidey commandeers a boat of his own, but unfortunately his motor stalls while he's making chase, leaving him vulnerable to 2 other boats as they make their way towards him. He manages to web away and we are reintroduced to our old friend from Spider-Man Strikes Back. Unnecessary bikini girls. Mr. Zyder talks about how to dispose of Professor Marine and they land on taking him to a farm in the new territories where he can live out a peaceful grave.
Aww, how sweet. Tin Man does have a heart.
Peter and Emily start posting pictures of the professor on telephone poles like he's a lost puppy, and then take a cab to a helicopter to follow the tracking device Peter placed on him earlier. Zyder's main goon notices the posters and walks to the farmhouse to call Zyder about the new problem. They offer Professor Marine a beer, to which he responds,
Don't confuse me.
kind to me before you kill me. I'll die with mixed emotions.
Come on, guy. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Kick back a little bit. Have a drink. Well,
It's not like you're gonna die or anything.
Peter and Emily manage to locate the village where Professor Marine is being kept, but Zyder's gang already has plans to relocate. Peter sets himself and Emily with walkie-talkies and goes undercover to follow the beeper.
You look Chinese if you don't show your face.
Yeah, I know. That's the whole idea.
Zyder's gang hide Professor Marine in an umbrella crate and load him onto a van with Peter following close behind. Peter tells Emily that the professor seems to be getting further away and she spots the van. Peter returns to the helicopter and they follow the van to a Chinese restaurant. Well, I guess every restaurant's a Chinese restaurant when you're in China, but you get the point. Spider-Man appears on the roof of the building and drops down to fight and web two goons. Spidey notices the boat leaving the dock, but gets hit by a tranq dart and falls into the waters below. Three men come by and fish him out of the water and take him to the hospital where he is unmasked, revealing to Emily that Peter is Spider-Man. The doctor uses acupuncture of all things to wake Peter, and Emily apologizes for calling him a coward back at the apartment.
Okay. Tell the doctor to please remove the needles.
Professor Marine is brought back to Mr. Zyder's company, much to the dismay of Mr. Zyder, and they decide to hold out until dark to dispose of him. Spider-Man follows the professor with his beeper and makes his way to the roof where he webs up three more goons and ties the fourth to a railing. He makes his way inside, knocking out Mr. Zyder with a door and saving Professor Marine. Spidey calls the police and they take Mr. Zyder and his men away. The professor clears Minlow's name and Emily promises to keep Peter's little secret. Emily decides to stay in China and learn about her heritage, and Peter and Emily share a kiss because
that boy's got more things shaking than a belly dancer in an earthquake.
They then share another kiss, and the movie ends, closing this chapter of Spider-Man's history. Let's break it down.
Plot.
The plot of this film is probably the most cohesive of the trilogy. At no point did I feel like there were any elements that felt out of place or unnecessary. They seem to have put some real effort into showing off the Chinese culture and making it more than just a background for the movie, and I gotta give them a certain amount of respect for that. However, this does cause the film to slow down a little bit when they're doing sightseeing towards the middle of the film. A lot of it feels very unnecessary to the overall plot, and I wish they could have been more clever about how they streamline that into the story itself.
Characters.
The Dragon's Challenge has the best character work of the whole trilogy. Unlike the last two films, every character feels fleshed out and three-dimensional. Even Julie, even though she doesn't show up in either of the two previous films, she feels justified in her existence as an emotional anchor point for Peter. The only character I don't like is Mr. Zyder. He's essentially just a carbon copy of Mr. White from the previous film, just based in Hong Kong. You could honestly swap those two characters out and no one would notice or care. So not only is he the worst character of the trilogy, but he's not even the best character in this movie. He might as well not be there at all, to be honest.
Visuals.
Now let's start off with the costume. Now I'm not sure how they did it, but I think this is the best costume of the trilogy. Something about it just feels like it has an extra little flavor in it. Now this could just be a case of Stockholm Syndrome, but I honestly kinda like the costume in this movie. They swapped out the traditional white lenses seen in the previous two films for reflective ones, and I kinda like this a lot better. It makes the costume stand out on its own, and I think it gives it a unique identity, which I honestly prefer. This could just be me going crazy, but I also think they did something new with the belt buckle. It's possible that I just never noticed it before, but something about the belt buckle in this movie captured my eye, and I think it's a good touch. Most, if not all, of the special effects in this movie are done practically, even more so than the previous two films. This film completely bypasses the horrendous compositing and terrible editing in the last two films, which brings me on to
editing.
The editing here is clean. Not once was I taken out of the movie because of a weird transition or an odd cut. Everything is very cohesive and it allows the story and the characters to take front and center stage rather than being like, oh wow, they did that on a green screen. Wow, that's some terrible wire work. You're just in the movie. It's nothing spectacular, but it's more than the past two movies can say.
Sound.
The music in this movie isn't terrible, but it's not exactly good. I remember enjoying the music while I was watching the movie, but 2 days later, I couldn't so much as hum the tune back to anybody, let alone recognize that it's from this movie if I ever heard it. Now the sound design is much cleaner and much more subtle than the last two films. It manages to completely avoid the cartoon sound effects that you usually get from movies of this era. Honestly, the biggest audio atrocity is that stupid cap gun, but besides that, everything is great.
Ranking.
When looking back at the Dragon's Challenge and Strikes Back side by side, it's honestly hard to say which one is better. Hell, if you look on IMDb, both films have a 5.4 star rating, so even the other fans who have seen it agree that they're pretty much equal in quality. However, when I break it down, it's clear to see that the Dragon's Challenge improved on the last film in pretty much every way. Admittedly, I hesitate to put it on the top of the rank, a fear of there being some racial insensitivities that I'm simply too ignorant to understand. That being said, I just can't help but feel that Spider-Man Strikes Back just isn't as good of a movie. So I've decided to put it just above Spider-Man Strikes Back, but honestly, it's a real close call. I can't say that I can imagine any other movie coming in between these two, because they are truly equal in quality, but I think Dragon's Challenge just barely squeaks above it. You know what that means? Congratulations! You are the best movie of all time, according to me, until something better comes along and takes your place, so enjoy it while you can! Spider-Man: The Dragon's Challenge is a forgotten gem, but honestly, the whole trilogy is. Despite their flaws, each film is a unique look back to the web-slinger's history that I just enjoy looking back at from time to time. It's truly unsettling knowing that these films will never get another official release, but as they stand, they're great pieces of lost media that are worth seeking out. That being said, it finally feels good to be done with the 70s version of this character. Now we can finally look forward to the future of the web-slinger and look at the things that have happened in the last 20 years. What was that? What do you mean I forgot one? What the hell is a Turkish Spider-Man? Make sure to join us next time when we take a look at Turkish Spider-Man? As always, to view the full rank, go to www.ulickstovetop.com and click UMR in the main navigation. Bye!
He's easy, breezy, beautiful. Might even unbox a vegetable. He's Ulick Stovetop.